after the war was over, the successful events, the return of Bangabandhu, the return of Sheikh Mujib from London, coming into Delhi, he was to come from the airport and drive via Vijay Chowk up to Rashtrapati Bhavan. So I braved the Delhi cold, December cold. It was very, very cold, I remember. I braved it and I went on my scooter all the way to Vijay Chowk to be. There was a sparse crowd there. Most people didn't really know it. It had been announced on All India Radio. Some people may have heard it. So there were a couple of people there. So I went and saw it. I was always a great buff for current affairs, and I wanted to be a part of history to see Bangabandhu returning here. The great victory being cemented finally, and so I stood there, and I didn't have a camera. I'm sorry, and there were no mobile phones. When one couldn't take any photographs, one could have no records at all. All I did was that I shouted "Joy Bangla," and I waved my hands at him, and he waved his hands back at all of us. So these are two very poignant memories that I have got of 1971 while being a student in Delhi. But I also do remember very clearly the month of March. 1971. I remember the very great storm, the cyclonic storm in East Pakistan, which laid low 500,000 lives, and how badly the relief work for that was organized by Pakistan. The kind of contempt with which the West Pakistani held the East Pakistan, it was all over the media at that time. And then the progression of events as the elections were fought out and the Awami League was declared as the clear winner, and the reluctance of Bhutto and his cohorts, Yahya Khan and party, later of course Tika Khan and people like that. In the middle of all this insanity which was going on at this time, the only sane figure in Pakistan who stood up was the then Chief Marshal Administrator in Dhaka, Sahibzada Yaqub Khan. Lieutenant General Sahibzada Yaqub Khan. And he was the one who actually refused the orders of Yahya Khan to fire and eliminate various intellectuals to carry out that near genocide kind of action which the Pakistan army did. Sahibzada Yaqub Khan was of course removed from the appointment, sent back to Pakistan. I think he didn't even get an appointment after that, but subsequently he became the foreign minister of Pakistan in a civilian government many years later. Just coincidentally, Sahibzada Yaqub Khan was the elder brother of Sahibzada Yunus Khan. Sahibzada Yunus Khan was from 3rd Garhwal Rifles and was the center commandant of the Garhwal Rifles Regimental Center. That's my regiment. So we had two brothers, Yunus Khan in the Indian Army here and Sahibzada Yaqub Khan on the other side. Both belonged to the Rampur family. So these are the memories I still remember of March, and 25th March, the dedication, the declaration by Bangabandhu of the state of Bangladesh after enough was enough, because he had tried his best to reason out with the authorities. Somehow the one issue which probably the Pakistanis just could not digest was the fact that someone from East Pakistan, a party from East Pakistan, a leader from East Pakistan would finally come and rule in Islamabad and rule over the Punjabi. Because the perception was Pakistan was the Punjabi Musliman. That was the larger perception of the whole nation of Pakistan. The whole issue had started from language. We all understand how proud the Bengalis are of their culture, of their language. There is a commonality, Tagore on this side, Nazrul Islam on the other side in Bangladesh. These are the kind of commonalities which exist in terms of Bengali culture. The West Pakistani just couldn't understand it. They thought that Urdu could be the only official language of Pakistan, and that is what started the whole ball rolling from 1952 onwards, which ended in 1971 on the 16th of December. Having said this, the unnecessary controversy which is being raised today regarding the very famous conversation between Field Marshal Manekshaw and Prime Minister Indira Gandhi, both great personalities, very, very strong personalities who knew their jobs extremely well. Today, a controversy to say that the advice given by Field Marshal Manekshaw was never given. And it was all the idea of Prime Minister Indira Gandhi herself. Her decisions were taken based on her own ideas and her own advice given to herself. I mean, this is, I consider it fairly ridiculous. I was aware that such talk was going on in various circles because I had attended a particular session, an event in one of the major institutions, think tanks in Delhi once, where I spoke about the Field Marshal and his achievements. And when I spoke about this particular advice which he had given to the Prime Minister, someone turned around to me and told me that, but there is no record of this. Okay, yes, there are records of not many records of so many things. But I always explain it this way, that the Field Marshal was known for one thing. Of course, he was known for his professionalism, he was known for his sense of humor, he was known for his ability to lighten an environment, come down to the level of the troops and create some kind of a banter and backslapping with them. All that he was known for. But the one thing I think you can never take away from the personality of Sam Manekshaw was his dignity and his integrity. And today, by questioning this, we are actually questioning his integrity. To say that for all these years, Sam Manekshaw was speaking about it. I heard it officially at the Staff College talk by the Field Marshal. I heard it at the higher command wing, subsequently earlier as a DS at the Staff College. I heard it. So there are at least 3 or 4 times that I heard him speak this. His advice, that my famous advice to then Prime Minister Indira Gandhi, that March, April were not the months to go in. The initial conflict initiation was not a very good idea. There were lots and lots of reasons for it, which we need not go into. And Indira Gandhi tried her best to convince him. Even Jeevan Ram, the defense minister, then tried his best to convince him. But Sam was strong and he held on. He said, well, we will probably have to get my designation. And he had his way. And the nation ultimately went to war in December, the 3rd of December. And that too, we were fortunate that the initiation was not done by us. It came from the Pakistani side out of sheer frustration. And of course, there is that famous saying that the Pakistani strategy of the defense of East Pakistan was that the defense of East Pakistan lies in West Pakistan. That's a very, very interesting aspect. The defense of East Pakistan lies in West Pakistan, which meant that the Pakistan Army had to engage the Indian Army or the Indian Armed Forces, the Pakistani Armed Forces had to engage the Indian Armed Forces on the Western front, in a sufficiently strong way, so that the Indian Army could not dedicate, reserve any resources to fight a successful war on the Eastern Front. This was the broad strategy that they always had followed, and much of this has been written also in Pakistani military literature. We were perhaps aware of it, and that's why our strategy very clearly said that we will go for East Pakistan, to capture maximum space in East Pakistan, to help create a government, the government which was already existing in exile in Calcutta, to go back into Bangladesh, also to allow the 10 million refugees who had come in here to return to their home. Dhaka was not really the objective, as one learns. Dhaka would only be a contingency as the war progressed. And of course, the Western Front would be an offensive defense, where we would not commit ourselves to anything risky, anything which would require a huge amount of troops, but it would be all along the front. So right from the Ladakh, from Kargil, right down till Naya Chor, in opposite Barmer, the operations were continuing in this manner. Light operations were continuing. The Pakistanis, of course, attempted lots and lots of things on the Western Front too. Of course, the Eastern Front was all about speed, about energy, about dynamism. We were hugely assisted hugely assisted by the Mukti Jodha, the Mukti Bahini. Their presence made a huge difference, primarily because they were the stormtroopers right in front. They provided the navigation, the assistance in terms of language. They knew the lay of the ground, and that made it so much easier, primarily because the Indian Army was not fighting a war of attrition. We were not banging our head against the huge defenses which the Pakistan Army had set up, particularly on the western side of Dhaka, from the approaches which are coming in from the West Bengal frontier towards that side. This was the area. This was the area of much more riverine content. We did not bang our head against this. It was a war of the engineers. The engineers of the Mukti Bahini helped create enough shunts, we put in enough resources to make sure that we bypassed and kept going beyond to try going as deep as possible. In the midst of all this, one of the most interesting things which emerges, of course, the severe resistance that we faced at a place called Ili, the northwest portion of Bangladesh, where 33 Corps, 20 Mountain Division was involved in operations. But the other very, very interesting area was the area which offered all the opportunities. And this was the area of the Meghna, from where 4 Corps was making an advance towards Dhaka. We had already carried out a certain amount of ad hocism by creating, allowing 101 communication zone area to virtually act as a division headquarters with the resources under it, and the northern portion was all under it. 4 Corps opportunities, and that is how the very famous Helicon operation, because Group Captain Chandan Singh's helicopters and Gen Syed Singh's overall dynamism and drive ensured that we got that foothold and got that step across the Meghna, into which we pumped our troops. That was the bridgehead into which we pumped our troops. And the moment we had done that, we were into the Dhaka Bowl, and it was just a question of a push to the gates of Dhaka. And the Tangale drop by 2 para ensured that we had reached right there where it was necessary for us to reach to threaten Dhaka. And then Dhaka became a reality. It was always the center of gravity. It became the reality, and when the final message to Pakistan was read out, and probably that is what finally led Pakistan to capitulate.